Hello everyone. So, Civilization 6 been out for a while, and here I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on the game so far. Well, besides a few omissions, such as teams and multiplayer and map variation, I mean, come on, how can you not have a large Earth map in a Civilization game at launch? I would say that the game generally feels more complete than Civilization 5 did when it launched. And now to me, what makes a Civilization game great is the empire building, and if there is a theme to my criticism of the game, it is that Civilization 6 feels a lot more like empire maintenance. So, let's look at some of these specific mechanics. But just before we get into details, something I'd like to see for Civilization would be to give each leader more unique starting material. Or any unique starting material for that matter, such as, say, another settler, a builder, a couple of scouts. I mean, perhaps even a wonder. You get the idea. Like, right now, the early game, and by early game I mean the first 30 or so turns, really almost always play the same, no matter what civilization you play as. And I don't know if they should. I just wanted to mention that it's something that always bugged me a bit about the game. Workers now improve tiles immediately, and this is a great improvement because previously when you wanted to improve a tile, you first had to build the worker, then move him to the tile, then wait for him to build the improvement, which became a major pain point for planning your empire builds. However, in return, workers now vanish after improving 3 tiles, as seen right here, goes poof. And on the face of it, this seems like a reasonable trade-off. However, in reality, it actually becomes even more frustrating than before, because limited improvements per worker actually means no more worker automation, which in previous games saved you lots of mid and late game micromanagement, at least if you so desired. Now, you must constantly and throughout the entire game produce and micromanage workers, which frankly, I find mind-numbing. And, I mean, from a balance point of view, what the worker does is add a time and a cost to upgrading tiles, and we can ask, is there a better way to achieve this? If it's even necessary, and I would propose that tiles simply become upgradable from the city screen, or perhaps even automatically so. Let's say, for example, you're in here in the city screen. When a city has worked a tile for a number of turns, pick 10, then the tile becomes upgraded. And if you want to have a cost attached to it, you could. I'm not sure it's necessary. And there might also be a bit more to this. So, for example, maybe cities provide a basic upgrade to tiles, such as farms, mines, pastures, and which then, further down the line, there can be some upgrades to those, maybe through other units or inside the city screen. But I would at least make the argument that workers are no longer necessary for the gameplay, and mostly they distract from it. Okay, now let's talk about Civics, the game's culture system. Civics are research similar to technology, but with culture instead of science. Researching civics unlocks policies, governments, buildings, and other game mechanics. Now, this is fundamentally a good system. It's fun, it's interesting, and, well, most importantly, it's different from the previous game. However, the way it's implemented does introduce some gameplay issues. So let's have a look at these. So every time you complete a civic research, you may change your government and change your policies. Making a change at any other time will cost you gold. Now, most of these policies are actually good. They give you specific bonuses based on the state of your empire, such as +1 production in all cities, or unit maintenance reduced by 1 gold per unit. It is very clear when you want to be using these policies. However, some of them give you production bonus towards things you will be building in the future, such as this one, production bonuses towards building defensive buildings, or 100% production bonuses towards ancient and classical era naval units. Now, these are very specific and massive bonuses, so they're effectively asking you the question, what will you be doing in the next few turns? Which is a question that you might not be prepared to answer at the very moment and will cause you to have to stop and assess your empire. So every time you finish a civics research, you kind of have to think, well, what will I be doing in the next 8 to 10 turns? And this really breaks the flow of the gameplay. So the first thought is, could we just get rid of those policies? And then I realize, maybe then people would just pick a policy setup and rarely change it, which would defeat the purpose of the system in the first place. And there's also the problem, which is that, particularly in the early game, you're choosing only a small number of the available policies, which means that from a balance perspective, some of the policies will get frequently picked and others will almost never get any consideration. So this is where I'll suggest a rather drastic change. What if policies became more like talents from RPG games? So that whenever you complete a civics research, such as Code of Laws, you pick one of the available policies and keep it permanently. This way you can sort of jigsaw puzzle your own government, and it solves the balance and game flow issues, because now each policy is only balanced against the other policies in that specific civic. I mean, this of course means the values of the bonuses would have to be altered rather drastically. And now for something completely different. The wonders and districts. I like the way they make the cities sprawl out on the map, and I really appreciate the visual improvements this gives the game. Starting with wonders, they're now placed directly on the map and have various restrictions on their location. Let's just pick an example here. We'll see the Terracotta Army requires barracks or staple must be adjacent to an encampment. This is something I really appreciate because it opens up a situation where you cannot just always go for the exact same build. There will be wonders that naturally fit a certain city location. It also creates a bit of a trade-off. Building a wonder costs a workable tile. Another good design decision in my book. In fact, I would love to see this system pushed even further, with some wonders taking 2, 3, or even more tiles. Districts have adjacency bonuses, which to me feels, you can see here, like building this district here will give a bonus, building it here will not. This to me feels wrong or frustrating to optimize, but I don't have a strong logical argument as to why, so I will just leave it at that. I'm not a fan of the mechanic, but I also won't criticize it. However, the real sinner here is that some buildings, such as, say, factories, we can find this right here. Where are you? There. Some buildings like factories will say, bonus is extended to all cities within 6 tiles. Now, granted, it's not a big bonus, and if you lose out of it, it's not that big a deal, but still, it means that every time you want to place your industrial districts, or every time you want to place certain buildings, you start tile counting, and it just feels a bit frustrating or arbitrary to try and optimize this. You miss out 1 tile on a city and suddenly it doesn't get the bonus. So, is there a better way? And I would argue there is, and we'll get to that shortly. Because now we're going to talk about trade routes, one of my most hated mechanics that unfortunately carried over. This requires some explanation. It seems to me that trade routes are meant as a way to make the economic part of the game engaging, making your empire income a more active part of the gameplay rather than just passively earning gold from tiles. However, trade routes are, particularly once you get quite a few of them, just busy work, constantly nagging you to reconfirm the route, and you have to build 10 plus of the damn trade units every game. It's the most empire maintenance mechanic the game's ever seen, and I would argue that it adds no gameplay of any value. Damn it. So, here's my suggestion. Ultimately, we keep the trade unit, but instead of requiring the player to micromanage the trade route, we make the trade unit an autonomous agent who will move and make trades on his own. Now, the idea is that the trade unit will carry goods, food, gold, and science, just as you see over here, but he will do so autonomously, going between the cities in your empire. And the real win here is that now we can introduce mechanics so that, for example, factories, instead of just randomly assigning a bonus to cities within a certain radius, they will produce goods that they place on the map, which the trade units can then pick up and distribute. We can then shift the gameplay from just doing trade network maintenance and towards some kind of upgrade tech for trade units, giving them more capacity to carry items, faster speed, etc. And, in fact, instead of having just one regular trade unit throughout the entire game, with this system we could have different types of traders in the early game. You would have domestic traders trading between your cities. Later, international traders could become available who will trade between you and other civilizations. And later still, we can have freight ships from coastal cities or even air shipments. Overall, I would say that despite the rough edges, Civilization 6 does have solid gameplay. Particularly on the highest difficulty, you can now actually go to war early and take cities from the AI without completely crippling your empire. However, the mid and late game gradually bogs down as a higher and higher percentage of your game time is spent simply maintaining your empire. Or to put it more bluntly, the amount of interesting decisions you make stay relatively constant throughout the game, but the amount of maintenance work grows as the size of your empire and duration of the game progresses, ultimately completely overwhelming the otherwise fine gameplay. I didn't talk about the religion mechanics, nor the great people, both of which have been somewhat changed. However, I don't really have strong feelings about them, or maybe I haven't put enough thought into them yet. So, and some of it I'll also leave for a follow-up video, where I will be talking about the multiplayer and win conditions and other elements of the gameplay that change between single and multiplayer. So, if you have any questions or mechanics you'd like my thoughts on, or if you simply want to suggest another game, leave a comment and I will do my best. Thanks for watching.